This is one we haven't talked about on this channel before, but Barry. Bill Hader's HBO dark comedy. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe Barry. Like it's sort of a genre bridging hybridization of like crime, Breaking Bad-esque type show, along with like a funny parody of actors and Hollywood and the whole, I don't know, rat race of the thespian business. It's one of my favorite shows on TV, and it's one that I've never really written about or covered or reviewed. You can't cover everything. You can't write about everything. You can't make everything you enjoy work. Though that is what I pretty much do. Sometimes you just have to like enjoy something and not think about it too critically. But I feel like this time jump has made me have to. So obviously spoilers for the newest season. But a couple episodes ago, at the very end of the episode, Barry and Sally escape together. They leave. They get the hell out of Dodge. And Sally sort of shockingly decides to go along with him. Janice's dad, Jim Moss, you think he's going to like ambush them or ambush Barry there, but he doesn't. And then the next thing we know, it's like years in the future. They're at this house in the middle of nowhere. The whole setting looks like Barry's memories of when he was a boy, when he first met Fuchs, and it's very surreal. The house they live in is in the middle of a dusty field, but is perfectly pristine and white. Sally goes by the name Emily now, wears a brown wig, and which is weird. Instead of dyeing her hair, she wears a wig, which seems like a lot more work and very uncomfortable because she wears it at home and at work because they have a kid now, John. Barry goes by the name Clark and he wears glasses, and it's almost like he's Clark Kent, right? He's like in a very paper thin disguise. It's just glasses. And I don't think the name Clark is an accident here. Barry is a stay-at-home dad. I should say Clark is a stay-at-home dad. Emily, Sally, works at a local diner. And there's just all sorts of weird little things about this new timeline. There's a whole scene where Sally almost hooks up with this guy Bevel in the bathroom, and instead she chokes him. But this is an interesting parallel to the first season where, Sally deals with her ex, Sam, and how he choked her. So it's like she's working through some old traumas. She is an alcoholic disaster, just completely different person, dead to the world, dead eyes. They've both sort of converted to Christianity. Barry, when he finds out that they're making a movie about his life and Gene Cousineau's involved with it, he decides he's going to go to LA to kill Gene and to reconcile his new faith with the whole killing thing. He listens to multiple podcasts from various pastors until he finds one voiced by Bill Burr that says killing's okay. His whole Christianity thing is all they watch sermons on TV. They don't have contact with the outside world. Barry keeps John isolated and alone. When he finds out that John's going to play baseball or wants to, he shows him videos of kids getting killed by baseballs. It's horrific. It's child abuse. When Barry leaves and Sally has to watch John, she doesn't know how to stop him from crying because this kid is so dependent on Barry that he's just a total mess. She tries to make him a grilled cheese sandwich and burns it. And when he doesn't eat it, she says, I worked hard on this. Then she pours vodka into his orange juice to get him to go to sleep, which again is just horrifying. It's a horrifying neglect and abuse that's going on with this poor kid. And then there's this very bizarre scene of a home invasion that may or may not have actually happened. We're not sure if it's drunken hallucinations. There's a great scene. Hader does a phenomenal job making the tension just like through the roof as Sally walks through this brightly lit house after she hears some voices outside, and she's locking the door and she's shutting the windows, and then suddenly there's this shadow man behind her, and he follows her silently through the house, and she doesn't notice him, and at one point he shuts the door behind her, and she's locked in her room somehow. But she hears this guy out there talking, and it's the voice of the man she killed at the end of season 3. And then the house gets slammed into, and it's like this truck is driving through the wall. And I don't know if any of it's real. And frankly, I don't know if any of this is real. It seems as though we've jumped it forward in time, but there's so many surreal details that don't feel real that it's possible that this is all some bizarre thing in Barry's head. He wakes up at the end of the episode after he goes to kill Jean, and someone comes out and puts a bag over his head, and then at the very end of the episode, he wakes up in Moss's garage. As some people have noted, he appears more clean shaven, and I'm not sure if that's just an accident on the show's part. It would seem a little sloppy, but and then people are theorizing, maybe it's actually just this has all been in his head. Moss, we know that Moss can brainwash people because he had that poor reporter was speaking German after he had an afternoon with Moss and couldn't speak English anymore, or he could understand it, but he couldn't speak it. So Moss has some weird brain mind control, Jedi mind trick shit going on. It's possible that all of this is a nightmare fantasy that he's put into Barry's head, and that Barry will wake up and realize that he never had a son at all, and that in this way Moss will get his revenge on Barry for killing his daughter. That makes sense to me. And honestly, okay, so some people have said that this is if this is the truth, this would be a cop-out, that this whole thing really was just in Barry's head. As, some people suspected it was at the very beginning, because it's so like his weird fantasies, but a nightmare version, right? All of Barry's earliest fantasies, are like him and Sally having a barbecue with all the friends, and all these moments where him and Sally are like happily ever after. But this is the unhappily ever after version. The version where Barry is transformed into a control freak, and Sally's a depressed housewife, and they all have become these things that they dreaded. Well, I don't know if Barry dreaded that. He's become a version of himself he thought he wanted to be, maybe. One reason I like the theory that it's actually a fantasy, a nightmare fantasy, brainwashing, whatever, is because I really don't like what's happening to their son. What they're doing as parents is so awful and so hard to watch. Creating for this kid a life of isolation and fear. They've moved around a number of times, which has obviously messed him up, especially because then he is homeschooled. He's just totally dependent on Barry, and it's just awful. And it was that whole segment with Sally was so awful. Watching her drug her own kid, I hope none of it's true. I hope this has all been some form of elaborate mindfuckery torture that Moss is doing to Barry just to spare that kid all the trauma that he is going through. It seems almost too cruel for this show to put a child through so much trauma, something that we really haven't seen before. And it would be a great revenge, honestly, to give Barry this family he always wanted, to give him his son, and then to take it away from him without actually having to kill anybody. Moss seems like the kind of guy who would do something that completely screwed up. Anyways, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. There's other stuff, there's the idea that, we also see Gene Cousineau, who's gone off and lived in Israel for 8 years, and thinks he's changed, like he's come back to stop the movie from being made because it doesn't honor the legacy and memory of Janice, and it's almost like, oh, has he lost this gigantic ego of his? But then you realize that he hasn't had contact with his son or grandson in 8 years either. And the last we saw was him shooting his son on accident, but still shooting him. You would think that he wouldn't have run off to Israel, but would have, been there for his family. But he is like Sally and Barry and sort of all the main characters in this show, totally controlled by ego and self-centeredness. So I don't know if they're showing stuff from Gene's point of view. Is that an indicator that this is not a dream, that this is actually real, since we're getting all these perspectives. We get Fuchs, who becomes the Raven in prison. Gets a bunch of tattoos, like super respected in prison, like a gang leader kind of guy, and he's gonna go work for NoHo Hank, who has started a company called NoHo Ball, a portmanteau of NoHo and Cristobal, and has gone legit after building his sand empire. An empire built on sand. It's kind of an awesome, play on words there. But all of this feels like weirdly on the nose. Like I can't decide if it's like how these characters actually would have gone with their lives, or if this is more like this nightmarish fantasy that's happening. Would Fuchs actually become this well-respected prison Raven guy and get out of jail and have a prison wife and a prison stepdaughter and all this shit? Or is that just the kind of bizarre fantasy that might go on inside Barry's head when he's thinking about these people? I don't know. But I'm very curious to find out. I think this has been a good season. I know some people have complained about it. I thought the first part of the season was actually kind of slow, but there's been some crazy moments like with the killing of the Bolivians and Cristobal, and then the time jump has been fascinating and something that I just have been puzzling over, and I'm just not sure. And I like TV that's surprising and weird and different and doesn't just go in the direction you think it's going to go, and makes you think and makes you question, in this case, question reality in general. And so whatever happens, at least this has been a hell of a ride, and then a singular TV experience that Bill Hader and his team have put together. So I know he's also directing a horror movie. And certainly that scene with Sally in the home invasion is a good taste of maybe what to expect. It was really crazy because it is like a horror scene, but instead of using like a dark interior, where there's shadow and it's fully lit, bright white room. And you don't see that as often. Horror movies often employ darkness to create fear, but the tension here was created in a white space, which is so different and interesting. So what do you think? What do you think? What's going on in Barry? Is this real? Is this brainwash, mind wash type thing? What's going to happen? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, yada yada yada. Peace.